The story I'm about to tell you is one that haunted Cedar Lake for decades. It begins in the fall of 1998, back when the town was quieter, the streets emptier, and the people more trusting. What happened there would change all of that. Cedar Lake was the kind of place where neighbors shoveled each other's driveways, where the diner waitress knew your breakfast order better than you did, and where kids bike home long after the sun had set. But beneath that small-town calm, something darker had been brewing, unnoticed, for years. And it all came to light because of one woman. Detective Caroline Hart, Detective, started with a phone call at 6:42 p.m. on October 12, 1998. A panicked woman named Martha Lang reported that her 17-year-old daughter, Emily, hadn't come home from her after-school job at the library. At first, officers assumed it was a typical teenage delay. Maybe she'd gone to a friend's house or stopped for food. But Martha insisted. Emily wasn't the type to disappear. Not without a word. Not without a reason. Detective Hart drove to the Lang residence, expecting to calm a worried mother. But the moment she stepped into Emily's room, she felt it. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. The room was tidy, the bed made, the desk neatly organized. But the window latch was broken. Freshly broken. The edges of the metal were silver, not weathered. And outside, in the cold damp soil beneath the window, were faint impressions, two parallel marks, almost like knees had pressed into the earth. Emily hadn't left willingly. The Cedar Lake Public Library. Caroline checked the security tapes. The system was old, the footage grainy, but it captured enough. At 5:16 p.m., Emily left the building carrying her backpack and a stack of returned books. She turned left, toward home, and then vanished from the frame. But a minute later, a large figure appeared at the edge of the camera's view. Tall, heavy-set, wearing a hood. The face was impossible to see. The figure glanced toward the library entrance, then disappeared into the shadows. Caroline replayed the footage again and again. Something about the posture, the limp, it tugged at her memory. This wasn't random. This was familiar. 2 days into the search, a shocking realization hit the town. Emily wasn't the first. In 1995, 1996, and early 1997, 3 young women had disappeared from towns near Cedar Lake. None were ever found. All cases had gone cold. The local police treated them as runaways at the time, but Caroline had reviewed those files early in her career. And now, comparing the old notes with Emily's case, the similarities were impossible to ignore. Same age range. Same physical build. Same quiet, careful approach by the abductor. Someone had been hunting for years. And he had returned. On the 6th day of the investigation, a fisherman named Harold Pierce reported something strange at the Cedar Lake shoreline. A length of blue rope tangled in the reeds, tied into a precise sailor's knot. Caroline rushed to the location. The rope was frayed, almost as if it had been cut loose. Then she saw something else. Dried blood on one end. It was small, barely visible, but it was there. Crime lab results came back the next day. The blood type matched Emily's. The lake became the new focus. Divers searched for hours, then days, until finally they found something. A rusted metal door. Underwater. Standing upright like the entrance to a buried room. Behind it lay a sunken storm shelter from the 1950s, flooded, hidden, and forgotten by the town. Inside that shelter, the divers found rope fiber scraps of fabric and a single silver earring. An earring Martha confirmed belonged to Emily. Caroline was convinced the underwater shelter was only a temporary holding spot. The real location, the real lair, had to be somewhere on land. And the limp she remembered from the security footage? She went through old injury reports and found a match. Calvin Reed, a former dock worker who had shattered his knee in 1994 and walked with a distinctive uneven stride ever since. Calvin lived alone on the outskirts of Cedar Lake. His property bordered the very path Emily would have taken home from the library. Detective Hart drove there immediately. The house looked abandoned. Windows boarded. Yard overgrown. But the mailbox was full of letters, and the porch lights worked. Someone still lived there. She knocked. No answer. She circled the house and froze. Behind the shed was a large metal door. The same kind as the one pulled from the lake. This one wasn't underwater. And it wasn't open. Her heart pounded as she called for backup. When officers pried the door open, a staircase led downward into darkness. Flashlights flickered against concrete walls, revealing a narrow corridor lined with shelves filled with items. Women's scarves, bracelets, shoes, hair clips, dozens of them. Trophies. At the end of the hallway was a wooden door secured with 3 locks. The officers forced it open. Inside the room, huddled in the corner, was Emily Lang, alive, terrified, but alive. Thin, shaking, dehydrated, but unharmed physically. The moment she saw Detective Hart, she burst into sobs. Emily kept repeating the same phrase. He said the lake would keep secrets. He said nobody would find me. Caroline wrapped her in a blanket and promised she was safe. But the relief was temporary. Calvin Reed with Emily rescued. The investigation turned into a manhunt. Officers searched Reed's house, his truck, his workplace, and every wooded area nearby. Then the sheriff called Caroline over to examine something he found in Reed's bedroom. A map of Cedar Lake covered in red circles. Each circle marked the home of one of the previously missing girls. And there was one new circle. Freshly drawn. The Lang residence. Reed had been watching Emily for months. Suddenly, Caroline realized something else. The circled homes formed a rough path, a pattern leading deeper into the forest beyond Reed's house. She followed it. Dot was nowhere to be found. 0.2 miles into the woods, she found it. A cabin. Old, leaning, almost collapsing under its own weight. Smoke drifted from the chimney. He was inside. Caroline called for backup, but the nearest units were 20 minutes away. Emily's words echoed in her mind. He said nobody would find me. If Reed realized Emily had been rescued, he might flee, or worse, destroy evidence, the remains of the other victims, anything tying him to the crimes. Caroline couldn't wait. Hand on her holster, she approached the cabin and pushed the door open. Calvin Reed stood at the table, packing a black duffel bag. His hair hung over his face, his movements were calm, too calm. Without turning, he spoke. I wondered when you'd come. Caroline's pulse quickened. Calvin Reed, she said firmly, you're under arrest for the abduction of Emily Lang. He laughed, a chilling, hollow sound. You found one girl. Congratulations. He lifted his head. His eyes were empty, bottomless. But you'll never find the others. Where are they? Caroline demanded. He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his bag. Caroline drew her weapon. Don't, she warned. But Reed pulled out not a gun, but a matchbox. He struck a match, the tiny flame illuminating his twisted grin. You should have stayed by the lake, he whispered. Then he dropped the match. The cabin lit up instantly. Gasoline. He had soaked the walls with it. Flames raced up the beams, the ceiling cracking under the sudden heat. Caroline lunged toward Reed, tackling him to the ground just as a burning plank fell where he had been standing. He struggled violently, but she pinned him long enough to cuff his wrists. Smoke filled the air, thick and suffocating. The fire closed in from all sides. She dragged him outside moments before the roof collapsed entirely. Backup arrived just in time to extinguish the blaze, and to take Reed away. During interrogation, Reed said little. But after 14 hours of silence, he finally spoke. There at the lake, he murmured. Deep where no one swims. Under pressure, he sketched a crude map of underwater locations. Divers recovered skeletal remains from 3 of the marked spots, the missing girls from 1995 to 1997. Reed showed no remorse. He simply said, the lake kept my secrets. Until her. He meant Emily. Emily spent weeks in recovery, months in therapy. She struggled with nightmares, panic attacks, and the suffocating fear that Reed would somehow return. Caroline visited her often. Not as a detective, but as someone who had seen darkness too, and understood the weight of survival. Emily eventually testified in court. Her voice trembled, but she didn't back down. Calvin Reed was sentenced to life without parole. Cedar Lake slowly returned to normal, but something had changed. People locked their doors. They watched the shadows. They no longer trusted the quiet. But hope remained, because one girl survived. Because one detective refused to give up. Because even the darkest secrets eventually rise to the surface. 20 years later, in 2018, a memorial was built by the lake. 3 white stones for the girls who never came home. And 1 silver plaque engraved with Emily's words. He wanted silence, but we chose to be heard. Caroline attended the ceremony, standing by the water as wind rippled the surface. For the first time in 2 decades, Cedar Lake felt peaceful. And this time, the silence was a good 1.20 years past since Calvin Reed was sentenced to life without parole. Cedar Lake had changed. New roads, new stores, new families. Children who once lived in fear had grown up and moved away. The older generation rarely spoke of Reed anymore, except in hushed tones at the diner or around campfires. And Detective Caroline Hart, now retired, had spent her days quietly tending her small garden, reading old case files, and trying to convince herself the lake held no more secrets. But she was wrong. It was August 3rd, 2018, a warm summer afternoon, when everything shattered again. A group of teenagers swimming near the east side of Cedar Lake spotted something strange beneath the surface. At first, they thought it was driftwood. Then one of them screamed. It was a body. By the time police pulled it ashore, the crowd had grown. Parents, tourists, joggers, all staring in horror at the lifeless figure covered in lake mud. Male, early 30s. Bruises on the wrists. A deep cut across the left palm, as though head tried to grab something sharp. There were no ID documents, no wallet, no phone. But Caroline felt a cold shock at her chest when she saw the man's face on the evening news. She recognized him. It was Samuel Reed, Calvin Reed's nephew. Caroline didn't want to go. She hadn't set foot in Cedar County Penitentiary for almost a decade. But she knew she had to look Calvin in the eye. When she entered the interview room, he was already waiting. Older now. Thinner. His hair almost white. But the eyes, the hollow, hungry emptiness, hadn't changed. He smiled slowly when he saw her. I heard about Samuel, Caroline said, sitting across from him. What happened? Calvin tilted his head. I should be asking you that, detective. I'm not a detective anymore. You are when the lake calls, he replied softly. His voice made her skin crawl. What were you two involved in? She demanded. Why would your nephew end up dead in the same lake where you dumped your victims? Calvin's smile widened, chilling and unnatural. I never told Samuel to go to the lake, he whispered. He went there on his own to continue my work. Caroline's stomach twisted. What work? He leaned forward, eyes burning. The girls, Caroline. The ones you didn't find. She froze. There were only 3 victims, she said quietly. And Emily survived. Calvin chuckled, a sound like a blade scraping metal. There were 6. Caroline drove straight to the Cedar Lake Police Department. The chief, Marcus Doyle, a former rookie she once trained, met her with unease. Caroline, I know why you're here, he said before she spoke. But the files are sealed. And you're retired. I don't need authorization, she replied calmly. I need the truth. Doyle sighed and led her into the archives. Dusty shelves. Boxes untouched for years. Some labeled. Some not. The Reed case box was where she left it, or so she thought. Inside were police reports, photos, maps, diver notes. But something was missing. 3 missing person files she clearly remembered reviewing in 1998. 3 girls from neighboring towns whose disappearances were suspected but unconfirmed. They were gone. Every trace erased. Someone pulled these, Caroline whispered. Someone with access. Doyle swallowed hard. Caroline Samuel Reed interned here in 2017. In the archives. Her blood turned to ice. Samuel Reed had lived in a small rented house at the edge of Cedar Forest, only a mile from the old cabin that burned down. Caroline and 2 officers searched the property. At first glance, nothing seemed strange. A messy bedroom, a sink full of dishes, books about criminal psychology. Then Caroline noticed a trapdoor beneath a rug in the living room. It led to a basement. A cold, concrete room. And inside it, Caroline's breath stopped. Pinned to the walls were Polaroid photographs, hundreds of them. Girls walking home from school. Women jogging. A mother carrying groceries. A teenager reading on her porch. All taken without their knowledge. Samuel had been hunting. Just like his uncle. On a table lay a notebook. Caroline opened it to the last entry. She will be the 7th. The lake wants 7. Her pulse quickened. There were 6 lines above that one, each with nothing but a name. The 6th name was crossed out. The 7th, she stared at it. Her mouth went dry. Emily Lang. Emily was 37 now, living in Chicago. She worked at a non-profit helping trauma survivors. She had spent 2 decades rebuilding her life, piece by piece. When Caroline arrived at her apartment, Emily listened calmly, though her hands trembled. "So Samuel was following me?" Emily whispered. "4 months," Caroline said. "Maybe longer." Emily closed her eyes. "I always felt like someone was watching." Caroline reached out gently. "You're safe now. We'll protect you." But Emily shook her head. "No. If Samuel was following me, then someone else was following him. He wasn't smart. He wasn't careful. He was scared." "Scared of who?" Caroline asked. Emily stared at her with a haunted expression. "The same person Calvin was scared of." Caroline returned to Cedar Lake at dawn. Mist drifted low over the still water. For 20 years Shed believed Calvin Reed acted alone. Now she knew he hadn't. The trophies in his bunker came from different eras. The storm shelter underwater was too expertly built. And the sailor's knots on the rope. Calvin didn't learn those until 1992, yet the first girl vanished in 1989. Someone started this long before him. Harold Pierce's old words echoed in her mind. Lakes deep with history, not water. Caroline drove to the oldest home in Cedar Lake, Jonah Pierce, 82, Harold's father and Calvin's former neighbor. He sat on his porch, eyes fixed on the lake. "I knew you'd come," he rasped. Caroline sat beside him. "Who began all this?" Jonah closed his eyes. "My father," he whispered. "And his father before him." Caroline stared at him, stunned. "The Reeds didn't start the killing," Jonah continued. "It was a ritual. A belief that the lake demanded 7 girls from each generation." Caroline's chest tightened. "How many families took part?" Jonah's voice shook. "All of them once," he said. "Even the Harts." She jerked back. "My family wasn't part of this." "Your grandfather ended the pact," Jonah said. "Your father hid the truth to protect you." Caroline's heartbeat thundered. "And Calvin. He was meant to be the last keeper. But he broke the rules and took more than 7. That's why Samuel blamed him and why Samuel wanted to finish it." Caroline looked at the lake, horror sinking in. 6 girls before Emily," she whispered. "Emily would be the 7th. Jonah nodded. "And someone still out there intends to complete the ritual." That night, Caroline called Emily. But Emily didn't answer. Caroline tried again. Then again. Finally, a voice picked up, but it wasn't Emily. It was a man's voice. Raspy. Calm. Unfamiliar. "Detective Hart," he said softly. "I've been waiting for your call." Caroline's blood turned to ice. "Where is Emily?" The man exhaled, almost amused. "Right where she was meant to be. The lake takes 7, Caroline. Your friend is the last." Caroline grabbed her keys. "Touch her, and, you think you can stop this?" The voice murmured. "You think you stopped it 20 years ago? You only delayed it. The lake remembers. And so do we." "We," Caroline whispered. Silence. Then, "See you at the water." The line went dead. Caroline sped towards Cedar Lake, darkness swallowing the road behind her. She called every unit she could, but no one could respond fast enough. They had no coordinates, no suspect, nothing to follow. When she reached the lake, the pier lights flickered weakly, and fog drifted across the water. Then she saw the boat. It floated about 40 meters from shore. Inside, Emily, tied to the center beam, unconscious. Caroline's heart nearly stopped. Before she could rush into the water, footsteps sounded behind her. Slow. Deliberate. She turned. A man stood on the shoreline, wearing a dark raincoat. His face was hidden, but his voice was unmistakable. "You came," he said softly. Caroline raised her gun. "Step away from the water." He chuckled. "Death doesn't frighten me. I serve it." He lifted an old, rusted lantern and pointed it toward the lake. "There are things beneath us, Caroline. Things your grandfather tried to bury. But the lake remembers. And it calls." Caroline stepped closer, keeping the gun steady. "Who are you? Give me your name." He moved into the moonlight. And her breath caught, because she recognized him. The story doesn't end there. Stay with me and wait for the sequel.